We're here to talk about the EU AI Act and why does it matter? Why should compliance teams care? So let's dig into that a bit. The EU came out with an act to try to allow companies to work better with AI, with more controls and governance in place instead of the Wild West. And so they released something in August 2024, which highlights key items that they want institutions to keep in mind while they work with artificial intelligence. And they're not expecting you to work magic. They're allowing for a 2-year implementation period. But don't get too complacent. You need to start working on this now if you plan to work on AI. So, unacceptable risk. This is one of the first pillar that they talk about in the 4-tier system. So AI applications that pose significant threats to health, safety, or fundamental rights are prohibited. This includes systems used for cognitive behavior, manipulation, emotional recognition in workplace and educational institutions, and social scoring. Okay, so I think there in the meat of it, you can understand why they want certain applications to shy away from this risk. So again, it's unacceptable. So my interpretation of this is that if you're planning to work in these types of fields, the EU AI Act is not allowing for this to be done in those fields. And an example of that, when you're talking about social scoring, what comes to mind is the Chinese government. It's a very well-known fact that they have a social scoring network, and how they do this is they have cameras all over China, tracking people, looking at what they're doing. They have people spying on each other because they all want to be seen in the best light for the government. And then how do they create this scoring system? You guessed it, with the use of AI. So if you're a company out there that's looking to use any of this technology for those purposes that I've mentioned before, please shy away from it because the EU will not allow it. Next risk in this 4-tier system, number 2, high risk. So this is permissible, but they're just labeling it as high risk. And what it falls under that is AI systems that present substantial potential risks are subject to stringent regulations. This category encompasses applications in critical infrastructure, certain educational and vocational training contents, employment and work management, and AI components in products already under EU conformity assessments. Obligations for these systems include rigorous data governance, documentation, human oversight, and conformity assessments. So, how I interpret all that to mean is if you are going to use AI in any way, you need to have the right governance in place, the right human oversight. And this is something that we talk about all the time in relation to the application of AI within financial industry, and also if you're using it to combat financial crime. The robot is not going to do everything for you out of the box. You have to train it. You have to train it on the right data. You need to have the right programs and policies in place to ensure that you're covering potential risk. And you also have to make sure that the data you have the system pointing to is exactly what you want it to be. And this is why people talk about the issues with OpenAI and ChatGPT, is because if you don't focus your search, give it the right prompts to look at the appropriate data that you want it to focus on, it's scouring tons of data, and you could be left with results that either you're not, don't know enough to actually second guess it, so you won't have the right kind of governance on it. In addition to that, I'm sure you heard of hallucinations, where the AI system then makes up things because it sounds great, that it'll be plausible to your prompt. So again, when you're using the technology, you need to have the right processes in place, not only for the system, but for yourself as the user, to get the results that you ideally are looking for. Number 3 of 4, limited risk. AI systems that interact with individuals without obvious disclosure of their AI nature, such as chatbots and those generating synthetic content like deepfakes, fall into this category. These systems are primarily subject to transparency requirements, including informing users of AI involvement. So the example they gave, which I thought was a great example, is chatbot. Because usually when you deal with chatbots, you have a very specific question for it, and it's looking at a very specific data set to provide that answer. So it's not just scouring the internet looking for any old answer, it's looking at a specific data set. But of course, there's risk in there as well. So you have to ensure that you have the right data privacy structure in place and governance to make sure that whatever you're using, it's looking at the appropriate data and sharing also appropriate information. And also with the limited risk, again, I don't want people to think, well, okay, well, I'm building something in that area, well, it's all fine. No, it's a risk for a reason, so please be careful. They also mentioned deepfakes. Deepfakes are becoming more and more part of our society today, both for jokes, but also for real life situations. And it's being used by criminals every day, especially within the fraud space. And my guess is that within 2025, we're going to see the numbers of fraud actually increase substantially because the criminals are using this technology more and more, and they're getting better at it every day. And the last out of the four risks is minimal risk. So this is the lower end of the risk spectrum, but risk nonetheless. AI applications not covered by the above categories are considered low risk and are not subject to specific regulatory obligations under the AI Act. So if anything that was not mentioned above and they're considering it low risk, they're saying you're not under the specific act, but again, I want you to be very careful because the way you use this technology could change in an instant, and you could then find yourself then in a higher tier where you would be actually under the AI Act. So again, be very careful, have the right documentation in place that covers exactly how you're using the technology and the data you're using and all that good stuff to prevent issues later on.